Hello and welcome for probably the last session. I have around 34 questions for today's practice quiz, and hopefully it will be fun. So, should we start? Cool. So, the question would be displayed on the presentation, and you can answer it on the Kahoot app. It's 90 seconds for every question. Cool. All four of you got it right. Yeah, a simple question. If it is a website is designed as a static website on S3, then CloudFront is the a CDN, content delivery network, which can be used uh, to reduce the latency for the end users. Good enough. So let's move on to the next question. Fifteen seconds left. Okay, there's a split here. And so it's talking about a distributed in-memory cache-based solution. And that would mean Elastic Cache is the in-memory cache-based solution. DynamoDB has a cache, but it is known as DAX, which is a DynamoDB accelerator. And whenever there's a talk about having a cache for DynamoDB, it will be named as DAX, DAX. If it is for normal Elastic Cache or normal in-memory based cache, it is Elastic Cache, and it comes in two flavors, Redis and Memcached. So the correct answer here is option C. It is Elastic Cache. Yeah, time up, and I see only two people were able to answer. So the correct answer here is B, site-to-site VPN. So let's break this. So the company wants solution to get up and running in the fastest possible time. And because it is the fastest possible time, so see, from the question itself, because there is a connectivity required between the on-prem data centers and AWS cloud, the option can only be either B or C, because that is the way you can have a connectivity between uh, on-prem and data center. There are only two options: either site-to-site VPN, which is more of a software-based, and AWS Direct Connect, which is more of a hardware. A line is, like a fiber line is there between uh, on-prem and AWS. Secrets Manager is a service that is used mainly for storing your, passwords or secrets secretly in an encrypted fashion. And data sync is mainly for syncing the data. So the with the first line itself, your elimination strategy should help you to eliminate option A and option D. It is answers between B and C. Now the keyword here is that running in the fastest possible time. And direct connect to lay the fiber between the on-prem and data center is a time-taking process. It takes a couple of months, if not more. And depending upon how far the region is, AWS region is from the on-prem data center, and so on and so forth. Site-to-site VPN is more of a software configuration which can be configured. So that is the way you can do the fastest possible. And both of them provides a encryption. So both of the data is encrypted in both of them. It's just a direct connect. We will be having a dedicated line. And that's why the correct answer here is B. One tip for the exam: there is no negative marking, so no penalty. There is no harm in guessing. So feel free to guess. And yes.
Hey, Prasad, quick question for you. For some reason, I did not start the Kahoot on the cell phone. I tried it on my browser itself, and I could not go beyond the first question. So now when I try to go in, I might have to use a second nickname. It won't let me. So you might see another person on the thing.
Okay.
On the game.
No problem.
But it says, when I say, it says time up. Oh, okay. So I should have it on my thing. Okay, thanks.
Cool. Anybody else facing issues with Kahoot? No? Great. Should we move forward for the next question? Let's do that. Okay. Again, a bit trick question, I believe. Suppose there's a split here. The correct option is D, using global accelerator to provide low latency way to ingest live sports result. And I understand everyone would not be knowing what global accelerator is. So key to such questions would be elimination. So what exactly is the question asking? The question is asking is that The company wants an urgent solution that provides a low latency way to ingest live sports results. When I say ingest, it means they want to upload it. Right? So they want a way to upload the data quickly. So with that itself, you can always rule out option B and C, because elastic load balancer, is mainly for distributing data among multiple, like endpoints or multiple EC2 machine VMs. Or auto scaling group, as you know, it's a way to it's mainly for elasticity, scaling up and scaling down based on the load or the traffic. Neither of them will be giving you a way to have a low latency way to ingest the live results. There is might be a confusion between option A and option D, using CloudFront versus using Global Accelerator. So CloudFront mainly allows you to kind of access the data in a low latency manner. A Global Accelerator, what it does is that uh, if you move the data to the nearest edge point, or load it to the nearest edge point, then it is going to use internally a faster routing mechanism on the AWS backend network to send the data to the main server. That's the way Global Accelerator works. So read about it a bit. Let's move on to the next question. Yeah, I knew there would be a bit of a contention on this question, mainly between option A and D, and that's what happened. So correct answer is option D, dedicated hosts. So what we need to understand is the difference between dedicated instance and a dedicated host. Dedicated host does means that you have a specific hardware for yourself, and because here we are talking about a server bound license which is tagged to a specific hardware, you need to have dedicated hosts. Dedicated instance means that you have a physical hardware which is shared by multiple people, but a specific VM that you have got from that particular hardware is the instance that has been reserved for you. You'll always get that instance specific. Your instance is not going to change in that specific hardware. But other instance or other VM from that particular hardware can be used by some other company. That does not work well with the server bound licenses. Server bound license means that the whole server is bound to a specific license. Hope that makes the subtle difference. It's not a subtle difference, it's a quite big difference, very frankly, when it comes to the underlying virtualization and hardware. But yeah, subtle difference in terms of the terms dedicated instance and their dedicated host.
Yeah, I think that explanation was very helpful. That was very confusing for me for a long time, but I think now it makes sense. I can visually see it now. Thanks.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's actually, and that's why you so for cloud practitioner, I know all of you have aced it probably like 90 plus or something, uh, because there is no confusion in the options generally in SA Associate. And if you go for professional, you will see that a lot of options would be feeling that, oh, this is right, oh, this is also right, oh, this is also right. It becomes more difficult to choose. So yeah, having that deep understanding of every service might help. Cool. Should we move ahead? Next question. Yep, three of you got it right. AWS config is the service. So this is a classic example of giving a description of a service and giving four different services and to choose the right service. So yeah, option A is the right answer. Uh, Option D, systems manager, is mainly for monitoring and managing multiple devices, or like multiple VMs, or even the on-prem servers where you have the agent, systems manager agent installed. But if you want to review the resource configurations and ensure the compliance is met, AWS config is the service. So let us move on. Yeah, AWS Elastic Beanstalk is the right answer. Elastic Beanstalk, automatically provisions underlying servers, handles the load balancing, and all. It does all the underlying, heavy lifting for you, so that you do not have to do it. Opposed to that, AWS CloudFormation, it is mainly for writing your infrastructure as a code in a JSON or YAML format. Think about it as a Terraform if you have used it for infrastructure as a code. Amazon EC2 is just a virtual machine. Think about, you have a laptop at your, with yourself. Instead of that, you have a server on cloud. That's what Amazon EC2 is. But anything that helps you handle like things like uploading your code directly and handling the deployment automatically. When you say deployment, it's like deploying it to multiple EC2 instances across multiple availability zones, so that the capacity provisioning is done accordingly, the load balancing is done accordingly. That's the managed service, which is AWS Elastic Beanstalk. Moving on to the next question. — 20 seconds left. Yeah, the correct answer is target tracking scaling policy and not the step scaling. So this is where you need to understand the different scaling policies that we have and what are the differences between them and the scenarios in which each of the scaling policy would fit into. So the question here says that we have a SQS queue, and based on the queue depth, like based on the number of messages that are there in the queue, our target system, which is reading it from the queue, should be scaled accordingly. So it's that the performance of the application goes down in case of a sudden spike. So there is a possibility that there is a sudden spike and the number of items in the queue increases drastically. Then in that case, how we should be, so let's say right now we have a formula of one EC2 instance for 10 messages in a SQS. Okay. So as long as we have a number of messages as 5 or 6, we would be having just one instance. Let's say instantly it increases to 50. Then the number of EC2 instances we should be having is 5. So we need to base it on the target. That is the target should be the number of messages in the queue. If we do it as a step scaling, then what will happen is that it is going to see that, okay, my right now I have 5, I have 1, it has got to 50. Then this particular one would try and process as many as possible. The CPU would go to increase to, let's say, 70-80%. Then it will see that, okay, my CPU is increasing to this much, then I should be adding one more. Because it is step scaling, it is going to keep incrementally adding. So this is going to help, but it is not going to help as much as we will do a target tracking scaling policy. Step is going to gradually increase or the scale up the resources, but that gradual increase would mean that the number of items in the queue would then be gradually processed, so there will be a delay. So the best way is to target it. So when the queue depth decreases, let's say after processing 50, if it comes back to 5 or 6, then automatically it will be, like the 4 of them which got provisioned would be deprovisioned, and there'll be just one left for the number of messages that is required. Hope that helps. Let's move on to the next question. Yeah, 3 of you got it right. It is 70 reserved and 30 spot instances. Why it should not be on demand is because of the keyword most cost optimal. So between the two, spot instance is most cost optimal, but not every scenario can be handled by spot. But here they say that 30 instances are used to handle batch jobs that can afford a delay in processing. If it can afford a delay in processing, you can go for spot, because it's not that even if the spot instance has been, like a kind of terminated, you cannot start it again because it can afford a delay in processing. So option C is the right answer. Let's move on. Siskin has 7 answers correct. That's great. In a streak. Okay. Let's move to the next question. Okay. So option C is the right answer actually. Stack sets. And yeah, it might be a tricky question or not. Everyone would be understanding what stack set is. So AWS template is or a CloudFormation template is nothing more than a JSON format, a JSON like JSON format or YAML format code, which can be used to provision the resources. Great, that makes absolute sense. But the question here says about AWS organizations manage running their AWS accounts. So when there is an AWS organization involved, that means there are multiple AWS accounts, and these are spread across various regions. So if you want to use templates to deploy the resources, CloudFormation resources, then let's say you want to do it across 4 accounts in 8 regions, right? Every region has 4 accounts, and there are total 8 regions, or the vice versa. There are 4 regions and 8 accounts. That will be better. So there are 4 regions, 8 accounts. In total, you will be running that template 32 times. Cool, that can be done. But that's when we have AWS CloudFormation stack sets. Let me, probably let me Google that and show it to you. It might be easier. CloudFormation stack set. So if you have not heard of this term before, StackSet extends the functionality of stacks by enabling you to create, update, and delete stacks, which is the same thing across multiple accounts and regions with a single operation. So if you want to do it across multiple accounts, across multiple regions, StackSet is the way to go for. And if you go to your AWS management console, go to CloudFormation, you will see a option on the left hand side, options as stack sets. Okay, let's move forward. Sushil got 6 answers in a row correct. Seems like great. Okay, come on. Yeah. Yeah, two of you got it right. It is the AWS volume gateway cached volume. Okay, again, it's important to understand here what exactly the question is saying, and which is the best option. We need to understand that this is talking about a hybrid cloud infrastructure. When it say a hybrid, then it would mean that the resources are present at both on-prem and AWS. So from the question perspective, yes, AWS Data Connect is also a kind of a hybrid solution for providing network connectivity. It is mainly used for network connectivity. Volume gateway, or we can call it a storage gateway. It is mainly for providing a hybrid storage solution. And Snowball Edge is mainly for storing the data at the edge locations, and then you can transfer them to AWS. But what they are talking about here is the most frequently accessed logs are available as cached data locally. So they want two things here. One is the data should be backed up onto S3, and the data should be cached locally. And for that, we have AWS Storage Gateway, and AWS Storage Gateway has multiple types. We need to understand all the different types of the gateway, and then uh, in the volume gateway, there are two types: stored volume and cached volume. So you should be understanding that. Let me probably show you that in a documentation way. That is much better, I believe. So if we go to your storage gateways FAQs, then you would see that there are multiple types: file gateway, tape gateway, volume gateway. So there are three types of it. Okay, file gateway, volume gateway, and type gateway. And in volume gateway, there will be two types: cached volume and volume, stored volume. So read through those, understand the differences between them, and which one should be used when. Let's move on to the next question. Everyone holding on to their position tight. That's good. I know that could have been confusing, mainly because of the previous question that we did. And that's the term is in-memory caching. And that's why people would have thought about elastic cache. But no, it talks about a fully managed NoSQL persistent data store. And a NoSQL database, and that too persistent is the word here. NoSQL and persistent data store. DynamoDB is the NoSQL offering, and that's actually persistent data for. Elastic cache is like, it's just a cache. It's not a persistent. It says persistent data store with in-memory cache, and DynamoDB has an in-memory cache in terms of DAX, which we need to enable. It is not enabled by default. You can enable it with extra cost DAX, but it has a feature of in-memory caching. So the correct answer is DynamoDB. Yeah, three of you got it right. It is the CloudWatch that you need to schedule, and Lambda can be invoked to perform the job. Using EC2 scheduled reserved instances is going to be too costly. That's because Lambda is something that will be fitting much purpose in a serverless manner. And moreover, for scheduling part, OS based weekly cron expression is a legacy way to do it. The more cloud native way to do is use the CloudWatch. Cool. So let us move on to the next question. Yeah, again, three of you got it right. Using Bastion host is the best practice. That will be the hardened front end, like a hardened server in the public subnet, where all your connections can come through, and then you can place all the other servers more securely in the private network and connect to them via the Bastion host. So that's the right answer. Okay, Sushil topping Sysgain to take the number one place, and let's go to the next question. Okay, yeah, again, most of you got it right. B is the right answer. If you want to move it to another availability zone, then we'll have to stop it, take a snapshot, create a volume. I know it's a bit convoluted process, but that's what the right process is to do. Cool. Yeah, we hope it's as simple as it was in the C option, but unfortunately, it is not. Probably a feature request. On to the next question. Okay, so only one of you got it right, which is SSH traffic is allowed from everywhere. If there is one topic that is most important for your AWS Solution Architect Associate certification, then it is VPC, subnets, NACL, security group, all related to the networking. So if you can create a VPC on your own from scratch, a custom VPC, attach internet gateway, have a public subnet, private subnet, allow traffic from public to private only through configuring NACL and security groups and adding the right routes to the route table, then 5 or 10 questions you'll be able to easily get, like you'll be able to easily clear. So let's, because most of you got it wrong, let's discuss this particular question in more detail. So it's talking about ACL, which is network ACLs, network access control list. Network access control list, how the rules works is they have rules listed in the specific a numbered way, and how they are evaluated is that they are evaluated in a way that the lowest number would be evaluated first, and if that particular request that is coming gets like matched with this particular row, that and it can evaluate whether it is a allow or a deny, then it is not going to evaluate the rest of the rules at all. It's going to take the first one, match it. If it matches, understand whether it's allow or deny, then it simply stops there. If it's not able to match the request with the first one, then it goes to the second one to see whether it's able to match the request with the second one, and so on and so forth. Compared to security groups, when you add 3 or 4 rules to security group, then all of them are evaluated, and if any one of them says deny, it's going to deny. So that's the important part. So let me try and find NACL versus security group. I would be more interested in showing you the AWS VPC user guide, the more official documentation. Yeah, here it is. So differences between the security group and network ACLs, there will be might be few questions on directly this, what are the differences. But if you understand this table correctly, probably a lot of things would be clear. So here if you see this, we process rules in order, starting from the lowest number rule when deciding whether to allow traffic. All rules are evaluated before deciding whether to allow traffic. So because the question is about NACLs, and it's going to do it from the lowest order, the first rule says that allow SSH from any IP. So whether even if you have a deny after that, it doesn't matter, because it says for any IP allow it. Hope that clarifies. So like it might be a bit tedious work, but go through these user guides. They're really helpful, not only in terms of passing the examination, but understanding the basics, which will be really helpful while you will be working on AWS. I hope you all have the link to this, but if not, let me ping it in the chime, and later on I can ping it on the WhatsApp also. Let's move on to the next question. The correct answer is A, internet gateway. So I'm not sure why the confusion was with route table. The answer had to be either A or B, because that's where your address translation would be happening. It's either why it is A and not B in this scenario is because EC2 instance is in the public subnet itself. So it can talk to internet via the internet gateway. The NAT instance is not required at all. If the EC2 instance had been in a private network, then to access the internet, it would have to go through the NAT instance which is in the public subnet. But because the EC2 instance was already in public subnet, so it can directly talk via internet gateway. And that's why the correct option is A. Let's move on to the next question. It's a multi-select question. Even in a multi-select, there is no penalty. So do choose at least 2 questions, 2 answers. 15 seconds left. 5. So the correct answer is B and D. So let's break this question. So we need 2 ways to solve a specific scenario, and the scenario is a media company has static data, documents, videos, images, all are static data, which has also few paid content, static data which is also paid, currently hosted in the data center, and they want to have a personalized sign-on user. They want to, the paid content would mean that a specific signed user will be able to only access the paid content. So how we can solve it? Elastic cache, obviously the answer is no, we cannot be solving it through elastic cache, right? Here it's talking about designing the whole solution in a more cloud native way. Because it is static content, we can always save it in S3. And they say that users are located worldwide. It means they are located in multiple regions, and they're complaining about timeouts and poor performance. So they want it in a fast, low latency manner. So you can always use CloudFront to reach to your global users. That's the content delivery network. You can use also CloudFront for having a specific user signed URLs, so that whoever have that URL will be only able to access it. So option B seems to be correct, that you can use S3 to store the content and CloudFront to reach out to the global users and also for the personalized content. Let's see option 3, C. To store media files in S3 makes sense. Use CloudFront to cache at edge location makes sense. You'll be able to reach it to your global users. Dynamic and personalized content is not supported by CloudFront. That is wrong. Through CloudFront, you can always have the dynamic content also cached, and also you can have the signed URLs. Option D, migrate your application to AWS. Yes, you can do that, and deploy across multiple regions. Yes, if you deploy it in multiple regions, then your users will be able to reach out to the application which is closest to your region. And then you can use route 53 to route the request to your lowest latency. So uh, designing it in a more cloud native way, the best way I would say is B. D is more of a rehost. So there are multiple cloud migration strategies: rehost, refactor, relocate, retire, and so on and so forth. There are 7 migration strategies. Okay, so option D is more of a rehost, where you have taken your traditional application on your on-prem and you rehosted it onto cloud. And because you wanted to, reach out to your global users, you hosted it on, or you deployed on multiple regions and used Route 53 to route to the request to the nearest region. Using option D would be a more cloud native way and is much more cost effective, because you are using only S3. There is no compute power required, only the storage costs you are giving, and you're handling your low latency requests via CloudFront. So between option B and D, B would be much more cost effective. So this question can also come up in a way that which is the option which is most cost effective. Then the option answer would be B. If the same question comes with a condition that customer wants to move to cloud with minimal architectural changes, then the correct answer would be D. So similar question can be coming in different way based on the exact keyword. You'll have to choose the right answer. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. It seems only Sushil got this right. 20 seconds left. Yeah, most of you got it right. Option is B. Uh, it's mainly, and why it is not A, because it talks about invoking a EC2 instance. Now you cannot in kind of it's had it been a lambda function, then you can talk about invoking a lambda function, and then that would have been probably the best way. But there was no lambda function included here. It's all about EC2 instances which are up and running. So application is up and running on 4 EC2 instances. Whenever an event comes, you cannot start a EC2. You can, but effectively it will add lot to delay, because EC2 will first bootstrap, then it will install the application, and so on and so forth. So the application is running on 4 of them, and as soon as you get a event, and that event can be a CloudWatch event or a S3 event notification, should not matter. It sends to SQS. Great. Now your EC2 instances are reading from SQS. A similar argument can be made for option C also, which I'm glad no one has answered. SNS, what would have happened is that all of them have subscribed, so all of them would have read it, and all of them would have processed it. Because it is SQS, any one of them would be reading it, rest 3 of them will finding it empty, so they will not be processing it. So it's more like no duplicacy. Cool. So let's move on to the next question. 15 seconds left. Oh, that was a perfect split, I would say. Everyone thought a different answer. The correct option is A. And why? Okay, so let's see. Application takes about 3 minutes to start. Okay, so if it is taking 3 minutes to start, then because of some, like it says that some auxiliary software programs that needs to be executed so that the application can function. So all that information can be, if you put it in user data or metadata. So frankly, these two are just are locations where you can keep the data. There's nothing, this is not a solution in any case. The solution can be that for a restart, how it can happen. So either you can create a AMI, but that would have taken a lot of time if you every time start to do it. But if you're restarting it, then instead of like shutting down totally, you can always use an instance hibernate. So what happens in an instance hibernate is that all your data uh, is stored on a EBS volume and it is shut down, so that when you restart, that data is loaded into the memory from the EBS, and that will be the fastest way. So instead of shutting down or terminating, EC2 instance hibernate is the right way to do it. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Multi-select. Five seconds left. Yeah, the correct answer is B and D. Again, this is about understanding the network traffic flow, how the security groups needs to be confirmed. So one option that is 100% correct is option D, irrespective of reading of anything that is there. So how should I show you this? This is something that I would like to explain you guys in more detail. Let me see if I have a diagram here. Okay, AWS. Okay, yeah, here it is. So let's say this is the public subnet and this is the private subnet. Your private subnet has database and your public subnet has the web server. Here they are saying it is 443 port on which your traffic would be coming, which is your HTTPS. Here it is SQL server, so the port has to be 1433. So this information is given that your SQL server is running in a private subnet, which is running on port 1433. Your web server is running on your public subnet, which is port 443. So to allow traffic to the private subnet, you need to have a rule here for sure that allows the traffic of 1433, which is this to access SQL Server. Otherwise, SQL Server will not be accessible. And that request should be coming from only public subnet rather than from anyone. It should not be allowing to access SQL Server from anywhere. It should be only allowing access from SQL Server only from your public subnet. Similarly, here it should be allowing access only on the port 443 from anywhere, because it's a web facing, it's internet facing, it's a web application, should be allowing it from everywhere. So if you have that mental picture that what resources are in which subnet and which port needs to be open where, then you should be able to quickly reflect in and map it to the options, and it will not take you time to map it to the options. So if you go for security group B, so security group A is in public, security group B is in private. Okay, so in the private, you know that you need to allow 1433. Okay, it is allowing 1433 on both of them. From where it should be allowing? Only from security group A, or allows only from all sources? All sources, no, because you do not want your SQL Server to be exposed to the entire world. You want it to be exposed only through the web server. So option D is the right answer. So C got eliminated as it is. Similarly, for security group A, you know that they should be allowing access on 443. Good enough. Both of them are allowing access on 443. Okay. Now it says that you need to outbound rule for 1433 and 443. This can get a bit more tricky to understand. But this is where that you do not need an outbound rule for 1433. Its outbound rule is required for 443. Actually, outbound rule is not required to be configured at all. So this again goes back to, I will take you to the table here to explain this. Security group is stateful. The return traffic automatically is allowed regardless of any rules. In network ACL, it is stateless. You need to allow specifically return traffic. So option A and B, it's tricky. It's mainly because to confuse the answer, ideally, it does not require outbound rule to be configured. But because option is given and you need to choose one, then you will choose the one which has already port 443. So it's actually a tough question. I'm not saying it's not a tough question, but having that mental model, in your mind, that okay, this is how, whenever they start talking about our infrastructure, just put it into your mental model. It simply said that this is a two-tier architecture. Good enough. So there are two layers. Using EC2 instance as a flagship application. Okay, that means it's a web application, which is a two-tier application. Web servers, because it is web servers, and they have mentioned it is in security group A, are in public servers, public subnet. So you should have that picture coming up in your mind automatically. Across two availability zones, great. Then we have SQL Server, listening all port 1443. They should be automatically in private subnet across two availability zones. So if you can make that picture in your mind, adding these rules will be easy.
Yeah, I think this was a good question, because A and B got me confused too, because I was thinking, yeah, you have to have outbound, because when you look for a data in the database, the information has to go back to the front end. So that's why I got confused between A and B, but it makes sense about the security group rule. I think this was very well designed. That's a good question.
Yeah, it's just to, good part is not all questions would be tricky like this, but there will be few questions thrown in tricky. And in case if it gets confusing, leave it, skip it, and go forward. Just choose, there's no point. So this mistake was made by me, especially in professional exams, that I spent 4 or 5 minutes on one question. And then I realized that I do not have enough time for the other questions. So if there's any question which is like this long, in which you need to read like one full essay to get the answer, and it's very confusing, then leave it for the end. You can just mark it for review, come back at the end if you have time.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, so should we move ahead? So we have 12 more questions, and hopefully we are doing good on that time also. Not okay, we have around 30 minutes. Hopefully we should be good. So let's move on. Okay, no one got it. Any right question? Uh, okay. Sesgen, we'll come back to your question after this. Cool. All four of you got it right. Yeah. Whenever there's a SQL injection or cross-site scripting attacks, it is the WAF. So it's a simple, straightforward answer. It is the WAF which is used to uh, kind of control these attacks. Coming back to the Siskin question, and why is B more correct than A? So see, if it is a more like you do not need to set up a outbound rule, then the best way is to set up an outbound rule which matches the inbound rule. So there is no difference at all. So otherwise, what will happen is that if you'll set up an outbound rule with 1433, then what you are saying is that your inbound rule is also has 1433. Then what you are saying is that your web server is open on two ports, 443 and 1433 both. But you need web server to be only opened on 443 port. Cool. Let's move on to the next question. Twenty seconds left. Five seconds. Yeah, two of you got it right. The correct option is C. And why it is cannot be option A or B? That's see. Let's go one by one. First of all, it says that the application is critical to business and must be highly available. That means it should be across multiple availability zones. That's great. It also says that it should have at least 4 EC2 instances during regular traffic. At least 4. There is no requirement of any cost or cost optimization. It says that minimum there should be 4 instances, and because it's a business critical application, it should be highly available. So there is no consideration of cost. Then irrespective of even reading the options, the thing that should come into your mind is that you can have at least 4 across multiple availability zones. So let's have 4 in one and 4 in other to make it highly available. So you have 8 instances minimum running, 4 in one availability zone and 4 in other availability zones. And then you can scale up and down uh, for the traffic if it increases. But that will ensure two things, that even if one availability zone is down, you have at least 4 of them running. With that in mind, you can always come back to the options and see which matches. The first option, with 2 in one availability zone and 2 in other availability zone, it doesn't work. Reason being, uh, because if one availability zone goes down, you'll have only having 2 running, and we need at least 4 running. With all 4 in availability zone A, no way, because if availability zone A goes down, then you will be having 0 instances running. It says 4 in one and 4 in the other. Great. So overall 8 are running, and the maximum can be 12. It works well. Setting minimum to 8 is a kind of, and all of them are in availability zone A doesn't make sense, because if availability zone A goes down, then the overall application will be down. So that leaves us with option C only. Hope that explanation, helps you in narrowing down the options. Let's move to the next question. Yep, everyone got it right. So WAF is the right answer, and it has to be with application load balancer instead of classic or network load balancer. Shield is mainly used for DDoS attacks. I'm glad all of you got it right. Next question. Yeah, 3 of you got it right. S3 versioning is the right way. Cross-regional replication will also help you to, lose it, but now even that will not work. Reason being, if you are accidentally deleting it, then your replication will delete the data even from the other region. So versioning is the only way. So even cross-region replication is not going to work. First of all, it will be a costly thing to do a cross-region replication. But the best, and secondly, even if it is deleted, the replication is going to delete the data, unless you have the versioning enabled. So option A is the right answer. Next question. Okay. Let me start the timer also. 20 seconds left. 5 seconds left. Yay! Good. I'm glad 3 of you got it right. Cool. So option A and C is eliminated because it says the least amount of changes to the application. It starts with a line that it uses Amazon EC2 instance for front-end layer, and option A and C says use Amazon S3 to host front-end layer. So option A and C is anyways gone. There is a confusion between B and D. Okay, now let's read them. Both of them uses load-balanced multi-AZ elastic beanstalk environments. Great. For front-end and back-end layers, that can be very much possible. For the database layer, it uses Amazon RDS. Both of them use RDS with multiple read replicas, and it uses multi-AZ deployment. So we know that in case if there is a performance issue, we'll use read replicas. If we need high availability, we will use multi-AZ, right? So that's the difference between these two, kind of. So we go back to the question to see designing a solution that is highly available. And because it is highly available, we need to have multi-AZ. But then there is another problem. It says use Amazon S3 to store and serve user images. And the question says least amount of changes. So in this particular, like option B, multiple tables to store and serve user images. There is no mention in the question that how the images are being served right now. It does not say whether it is being used a MySQL database or some file server. It is no mention. But what is mentioned is that we need high availability. And for that, multi-AZ is the right option and not read replicas. So option D is the right answer. Let's move to the next question. Okay, so the right answer is B, which is storing the password in Secrets Manager. Storing password in AWS Key Management Service is not the right answer because Key Management Service is used to have the keys or generate the keys, which is used to encrypt the passwords or encrypt the data. So Key Management Service is not used to store any passwords. For storing any passwords, there are actually two ways to do it. One is AWS Secret Manager, other is AWS System Manager Parameter Store. So these two are the places where you can store your data, like in an encrypted manner or store your passwords or secrets. But it is talking about rotating the password. Then Secret Managers gives out of the box functionality for rotating password or gives a way how you can attach Lambda to do it. So option B is the right answer. Let's move on to the next question. Says can back on top. All four of you got it right. Yes. So NAT gateway is the right answer. You can have NAT gateway in your public subnet and route your outbound traffic from the private net subnet to the NAT through the NAT gateway. Cool. No explanation needed. Question number 29. Yep. Three of you got it right. Which is configure EBS and RDS with KMS. So there are two uh, key points in the question. The first is encrypted at rest, and that is why option C is not the right answer, because SSL is mainly encryption in transit. That's mainly the layer which through which you encrypt the data and send it securely. So for REST, it is where the data is stored. The data is stored on EBS and RDS, so that needs to be encrypted. But the second is the least amount of changes to the infrastructure. So instead of using KMS, we can always use Cloud HSM, which is the hardware security model through which you can generate the key and encrypt the database volumes. Right answer, but it does not have the least amount of changes. It's actually are more changes and more costlier option. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. Yep, all four of you got it right. It's intelligent tiering storage through which you can move data to the right storage. Let's move on to the next question, 31. 10 seconds left. All four of you got it right. Yes, snowball for the initial transfer, direct connect, and mainly because we need a consistent throughput. And that's why we do need a direct connect. Let's move on to the second last question. Question number 32. Yeah, two of you got it right. NAT gateway, I understand it's a long question to read, and that's why probably it took so much time. But if you start doing the elimination, right, it will be very easy. So even without looking the question, if you just like look at the answers, deploying NAT instances is not the best practice. It's always better to go for a NAT gateway instead of a NAT instance, because NAT instance is like you have to manage it yourself, and NAT gateway is AWS managed service. Moreover, either it is NAT gateway or NAT instance, it should be installed in the public subnet. See why NAT is used? So that your resources in the private network are able to access the internet, at least the outbound traffic. And to achieve that, your NAT instance or gateway should be in the public subnet. If NAT instance or the gateway is in the private subnet, then they themselves will not be able to access the outbound internet. So with that logic, your private should anyways go away. So it's option A or C. And between option A or C, deploying two NAT instances or deploying a NAT gateway, it's always better to deploy a NAT gateway. And that should suffice the answer. Okay, so with that, let's move on to the last question. Last 10 seconds left. Yeah, 3 of you got it right. B is the right answer. Because using AWS Lambda is the most cost-effective solution, because that is the serverless way to do it. Using Amazon EC2 instance means that you'll have to run the instance for 24/7, irrespective of any images uploaded to S3 or not. So let's say in a full day, only one image gets uploaded. Even then, your Amazon EC2 instance would be running for the full day, as opposed to AWS Lambda, which will be invoked when a image is coming, and then it will be done in the most cost-effective manner. So with that, we come to the end, and let's have a look at the podium. Jazam got 14 out of 33 correct. So she got 24. And Siskin got 26 correct. So that's pretty much that we had today, guys. But yeah, feel free to unmute yourself and speak. Ask any questions that you have. We do have some time.
I think this was great. As some of us, I think most of us were a little bit rusty because of not being, up to date. You can see that, but the questions were very to the point, with respect to the trickiness. So as long as we go back to the material, pay attention to some of the key topics, I think we'll be good. So really appreciate that.
Thanks. Yeah, and that's the only thing. Probably a bit of a revision, going through the key topics and doing during the exam, paying attention to the keywords in the question. Though I don't think it will be required, but in case if it is required for non-native English speakers, there is a provision of booking a 30 minutes extra time. So feel free to take that. While booking the exam, there is a accommodation part which you can you can click on that, and it gives you multiple accommodations. One of the accommodation is having 30 minutes extra for non-native English speakers, so you can avail that. It will definitely be required in professional examination. Associate, it might not, but there is no harm in having that in the back pocket in case if some of the questions are very long. Okay, any other questions, comments?
I'm good. Again, thanks, Prasad.
Thanks everyone.
Really.
Thank you so much, Prasad.
Thank you.
And Prasad, I'm assuming you have recorded this, right? We'll get this later.
Yes, I have recorded this. Let me upload that and I'll send the link.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers, guys. Yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me individually or on the group or on the Telegram group, whichever way mode you like to, or on LinkedIn, and you guys have my number. So yeah, I'll be really happy to hear whenever you guys pass the Solution Architect Associate certification. Good luck everyone.